Welcome into the zone. The Tide, it's a change in Knoxville as the Big Orange gets crushed by Alabama, and the Mocs get socked again. That plus your 2-minute offense and NASCAR Minute. But we start, as always, with the NFL playbook and dueling cousins in the Big Easy. As kids growing up, Falcons quarterback Mike Vick and Saints quarterback Aaron Brooks dreamed of playing in the NFL together. Today, they finally get their chance, and wouldn't you have loved to have seen the family backyard games at this house? Michael Vick would strike first with the touchdown runs, just sick. 10-7 Saints. What gene pull they got going on? Check out Mr. Brooks. His turn comes when he hits Joe Horn with the 6-yard touchdown pass, 25-24 New Orleans. The Falcons would go on top again when Deuce McAllister would find Pater for the second time on the day, 35-34 New Orleans. 2 seconds left. Jay Feely feeling it from 47 yards out as the Falcons get the win, 37-35. And here's the cousin comparison. Vick, 195 yards passing, another 91 rushing, and 2 TDs. His cousin Brooks, 192 yards passing and 2 touchdowns, and 38 yards rushing. The Titans visiting 0-6 Cincinnati. The Bengals' last win coming last season at Tennessee. First quarter, Jock Kitna would put the Bengals on top first. Lorenzo Neal with the touchdown, 7-0 Bengals. Third quarter, Steve McNair to Kevin Dyson for the touchdown. 20-14 Titans are leading to be just 4 in the fourth when Corey Dillon, did he make it? Yes, no? The officials say no as the Titans sneak away with the 32-24 victory. McNair finishes 16 of 27 for 215 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also scrambled for 6 times for 128 yards.
And now the Appliance Furniture Warehouse SEC in 61 seconds.
The Bulldogs producing 529 total yards despite playing without leading rusher Musa Smith, second leading receiver Fred Gibson. David Green and DJ Shockley combining for a school record 6 touchdown passes, sending the Bulldogs to a 52-24 rout of Kentucky. LSU managing just 242 yards of offense. Quarterback Marcus Randall throwing 4 interceptions, including 3 in his first 5 passes. Auburn wins this cat fight 31-7. 5 turnovers by Ole Miss resulting in 24 Razorback points. The Hogs thump the Rebels 48-28. Jay Coulter scoring his second touchdown of the day with 1:14 remaining to propel Vanderbilt past Connecticut 28-24. The win, Vanderbilt's first victory over a Division 1A opponent since Bobby Johnson became the head coach.
That was the Appliance Furniture Warehouse SEC in 60.
Welcome back into the zone and time for the 2-minute offense. Joining me for the ride, as always, on the Cricket Critics Couch is David Pascal and Alan Tiller from the Chattanooga Times Free Press. All right, guys, before we get started, as always, general thoughts on the weekend. David, we'll start with you.
You know, Ron Zook has been so scrutinized at Florida, but here's this, you know, you look at the 2 rivals that Florida's faced, Tennessee and Florida State, they've both got 3 losses too now, so you're wondering when the criticism's going to start hitting these 2 programs too, because they are clearly slumping.
Yeah, I think the criticism for Tennessee is probably not too far off. General thoughts for you on the weekend, Alan?
It's hard to believe that Tennessee was the national champs 4 years ago and was in the hunt last year. It seems like the whole program was falling apart. The FSU result with Notre Dame down there, just totally shocking, especially after FSU played Miami so close. Maybe you got to give Notre Dame some props at this point and believe that this might be their season of destiny.
Yeah, and Rutgers. Who knows nothing about no Rutgers? They put up a pretty good fight this week, too. All right, let's go ahead and start the clock. And our first question is, Tennessee, do they lack heart? That's been the buzzword around the locker room at Tennessee is they don't have heart. What do y'all think?
They just look like a beaten team. I mean, last night, Will Offenhuizel, who's usually, you know, the one guy on that offensive line who's so tough and so hardy, if you will, and keeps those guys in line, just looked like a beaten guy. And he said, we've got to make some changes. We've got to do some things differently. And they asked Fulmer after the ballgame, you know, what substitutions, what changes he's thinking about making. And he says, you name them. You suggest somebody we should put in, and I'll do it because our best guys are playing. It's just they're not getting the results they need. The offense is making mistakes. The defense isn't being as dominant as it would have to be to cover up for the offense, and they're just in a whole mess of trouble.
Is injury hurting them more than they would like to admit? I mean, they lost an awful lot of guys on defense, and the offense has been banged up. 1 or 2 key guys every week.
Yeah, I mean, defensively, they did. They had a rash that no team would want, but their questions are on offense right now. 222 yards, 6 turnovers. I thought Coach Fulmer said it right after the game. They're 7 games into the year, and they have no offensive identity. Even the team 2 years ago that was so young, by this point, had a kind of a turnaround game against Alabama, won a big game at South Carolina the next week, and really got on a roll and won 6 straight to close out the regular season. So this is just a team right now that still does not know what it's going to do heading into South Carolina, which all of a sudden looks like a very even game, and it shouldn't.
How do they keep this from steamrolling against South Carolina? Because they really seem to be in the cycle that they can't break.
Well, your obvious answer would seem to be that the seniors pull this one out for them, that the seniors step up, take the young guys under their wings, and win a couple of these type ball games. But, I mean, they're big playmakers. You don't know from week to week whether they're healthy or whether they're going to play or what. No one knew the situation with Washington until late last night. And then there were even some rumors that, maybe it wasn't an injury at all, that maybe he had gotten out of line. But, I mean, you can't question the coach for keeping a guy out for a concussion, but at the same time, so much stuff is coming out of that camp, you just don't know what to believe and what it will take to get them out of this funk.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how things shake out in South Carolina. All right, question number 2. How many bowl teams are there in the SEC? You only have to win 6 games.
Right, that's just it. I mean, and that's just how many bowls are there? There are a ton of bowls out there. There are a ton of bowl agreements with the SEC. So right now, I think you've got as many as 8. I think, you've got Alabama and Kentucky that cannot go, and you've got Vanderbilt and Mississippi State that are certainly not playing their way into a bowl. But everybody else is still there. You've got a bunch of teams like Ole Miss, Auburn, South Carolina. They're stuck on 5 wins. I think Auburn can probably get to 7 or even 8 if things go well. But some of these teams, I think, will be stuck with 6-6 records and can get in.
Okay, more importantly, how many legitimate bowl teams are there? Teams that are actually going to go into bowls, be favorites, be underdogs. You could probably count those a little bit with your fingers.
Well, if you talk legitimate bowl teams, every year there's going to be the bottom tier of the teams that make the postseason in college football these days probably aren't what you would consider, classic bowl teams. But at the same time, they're there. They're meeting the standards of 6 wins to get in. Thank goodness everyone's got that 12th game on their schedule, which for most teams was another cupcake. Because they had the tough game scheduled already. You look at those 8 teams getting in, and as David alluded to earlier, many of those would probably be underdogs once the bowl season gets here. And how many SEC teams are going to be in the BCS? I mean, 1 is the only legitimate answer. If some of these teams won out, they wouldn't even have a shot at getting in. So probably just the SEC champion. And that means come Christmas again, this conference is going to take another beating. Yeah,
the only scenario where you can see 2 is maybe if LSU gets in the championship game, knocks off Georgia, and Georgia could still go to like an Orange Bowl if LSU goes to the Sugar Bowl. But I'm in agreement. I think you're looking at 1 BCS team. But, outside of Georgia and LSU, really some of these bowl prospects, I mean, people are joking about Tennessee and the Peach and the Music City or Shreveport. They've still got a shot of going to a Florida Bowl just because if they get hot and can win every game except for maybe Miami or something, you're looking at who else is going to be there? I would think a Florida Bowl would want Florida if they're playing well, but there's no guarantee in that either.
Yeah, and it seems like Florida and LSU and some of these other teams are trying to play themselves out of bowls as well. I mean, LSU looked awful yesterday against Auburn.
Backup quarterback.
All right, time's up. Final question. Which undefeated team is the best? There are a lot of them.
I think it's exciting because you're seeing teams improve. I mean, I think Notre Dame played its best game of the season yesterday. I think Georgia may have played its best game of the season. Oklahoma is certainly playing its best stretch. I think you're in for an absolute mess here because there are, 7 or 8 teams that are undefeated. All of them. NC State played its best game of the season Thursday night. I think this BCS could be in for an absolute mess. I know that isn't a direct answer is which is the best, but still I think if someone knocks off Miami, I don't think Miami's playing the best of all of them, but until they get knocked off, I think they kind of have to be considered the best.
Yeah, they haven't lost in almost 2 years, but Notre Dame, Oklahoma, those 2 especially seem to have a legitimate claim on, hey, we're every bit as good as Miami.
They do, and I'm totally in agreement with David that until someone beats Miami, they're number 1. I don't care what happens. I don't care if they win every game by 2 points from here on out. Until someone beats them, they're the number 1 team in the country. However, Oklahoma has played a tougher schedule, and will have to go through that extra conference championship game as well, which means they're a little more credible getting to the championship ball game. And Notre Dame, they're playing a tough schedule as well, and they're finding ways to win. How many other teams could go through a 3-week stretch without an offensive touchdown and still be undefeated? How many teams get those kind of special plays and defensive plays every week? Tyrone Willingham, if he isn't already Coach of the Year, I don't know what it's going to take.
Yeah, another team that we haven't even mentioned in all this is Ohio State. Now, they had a key loss on offense yesterday, but they are still playing some awfully good football in a really tough conference.
Yeah, of course, they took a drop today. They dropped a couple of spots in the AP poll. It'll be interesting to see how this BCS looks tomorrow because you had Oklahoma #1 in it last week. Does Notre Dame move up to #2? I think they make more of a push on Miami. They're dropping in the polls. They went up to 4th in the AP, so that's already an improvement of where they were in the poll ranking part of the BCS this time a week ago.
And do we run into a situation real quickly that we did a few years ago with BYU, with the North Carolina States and the Bowling Green saying, hey, look, we're undefeated too?
They can't make a claim until they get a conference championship game and play a little tougher non-conference schedule.
All right, that is the buzzer. Thank you, Alan Taylor and David Pascal, for joining us. And if you want to read more from these guys, you can check them out every day in the Chattanooga Times Free Press. And if you have an idea for a question, you can email me at heather@ourtennesseevalley.com, and we will answer your question right here in the Sports Zone. And that will do it for this week's edition of the Sports Zone. For Mark Edwards, Webb Wright, David Pascal, and Alan Taylor, I'm Heather Williams. We leave you tonight with some of the best and worst plays of the week. See you next time in the Zone.